Alright, today I'm going to tell you why X-Plane 10 is the best mobile flight simulator you're going to find. Go into settings real quick. There's not a whole lot of options here. I've got my radio volume turned all the way up, but you can't adjust your graphics. You don't really need to though, because it looks great as it is. Now there's several options. We've got flight school, which I do like. A lot of other sims don't have that when it comes to a mobile sim anyways. There's several options here for general aviation, several different even aircraft that you can try, all the way to helicopter basics and warbirds. And then challenges, I find these fun every now and then when I want to do something different. You've got general, commercial, racing, helicopter, fighter challenges, and then inside these are different scenarios. This is the general aviation tab, and you can see there's several different scenarios. They're a lot of fun to play, and they only take a few minutes, so it's easy to practice in those modes without having to set up a full flight. And what I'll be focused on here is free flight. And we've got several different aircraft options here. The CESSNA 172 with 4 different liveries. The Cirrus Jet, and it has several options. The Piper Super Cub, Douglas DC-3, the Beechcraft Baron. Now you'll notice several of these are in-app purchases. We've got the King Air C90. So the app is free download, but you'll have to pay for some of the planes. It comes with a few unlocked already. Airbus A320. I do a lot of general aviation stuff, so I don't really fly a lot of airliners, but there are several airliners here that you can choose from the small CRJ regional airliners all the way up to the larger Boeing 747. I'm just going to scroll through here and give you an idea of a few of the options you have. And we also have one helicopter, the Sikorsky S-76. Then there's the A-10 Thunderbolt, the F-22 Raptor, and the F-4 Phantom, as far as your combat planes go. But right now we're just going to stick to the CESSNA 172 because it's in just about every simulator there is. And I'm going to set up a basic scenario. We're going to be flying in Seattle-Tacoma, SeaTac. I'll show you a few options here. Now the one issue I have with this sim is that there's not a whole lot of places to fly. We've got Innsbruck, Austria, Oahu, Hawaii, Juneau, Alaska, SeaTac, and then the Grand Canyon. And these all have great sceneries attached to them, along with 3D buildings and things like that. The only problem is that the maps are kind of small, so if you're in a larger, faster plane, by the time you get to cruising altitude, you have to turn your heading and fly back the other direction. It's kind of silly, but anyways, you have several options for weather here. See, we can adjust the winds, the clouds, and the precipitation levels. And then there's an advanced weather tab where you can even adjust the cloud height and the cloud thickness. Your visibility individually, you can adjust turbulence, storminess, I mean, you've got a handful of options here where you can configure just about any weather scenario that you would like to have. But we'll do more on the weather here in a few minutes.
Delta 61. Delta 61, Roger, 10-4, thank you. 1583, copy the 1082 on your beat.
We have another option to change the time of day. And you've got 4 options here. You've got an early morning, like a midday, evening, and then nighttime. And then here's my favorite, is the failures. You hardly ever see this in a mobile simulator, but if you're actually practicing, you want to have equipment failures. So I like to have the option to set things to could fail, and then I can test myself whenever they fail. If you go into your aircraft settings, you can change your payload weight, your fuel, your center of gravity, and you can also choose whether the engine is running already or not running. So I'm just going to set it up the standard, my weight for the pilot. Let's set a fuel option here. We're not going to be going far. I don't adjust the CG, and then I'm going to uncheck the box to have the engine running when we start. Now we've set up just a basic flight in the daytime, Cessna 172. You're going to calibrate your screen when you first get into the plane. Well, you touch the screen to calibrate your device, actually, because you're going to use the tilting of your device to control the plane. I love how this virtual cockpit has working gauges. You've got your yoke that moves with your phone. Obviously, you can pan around the cockpit, and you can touch and interact with so many things. The doors open and close, and you can do that in flight if that's your thing. If you touch and hold, then it'll show you all the things in the cockpit that you can actually manipulate. See, there's several things you can do here. You can even touch the yoke to make it disappear. That way it's not in the way of the panel if you're trying to fly by actually manipulating things on the panel yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and start this plane up. Actually, let's take a look around real quick. I want to show you how good these textures look. This is a mobile simulator, and it's impressive how good these models and these textures look for a mobile simulator. The textures on the road look nice, or the runway, I guess I should say. You can see the 3D buildings in the background. There's Seattle off in the distance, I presume. There's several different views you can work with. You can see your controls on the left and the right of the screen. We've got a throttle. The red circle at the bottom is going to be your parking brake. It's a little wing view for you. We've got the rudder at the bottom right of the screen, and then flaps and elevator trim on the right side of the screen. You can pinch the screen to zoom out just a bit or zoom in if you want to. Just pan around the cockpit a bit. And the textures in the cockpit are actually really good too. As you can see, the leather seats inside. We've got the pilot's door that is also openable. You just pull up on that handle like I did on the passenger door. And then if you double tap any portion of the panel, it'll actually zoom into that particular part. Now here I've zoomed into the center of it, and then you double tap again and it goes back to the original view. We double tap at the bottom and it takes us down here to the switches. Gonna turn the master on, turn the fuel pump on. Go ahead and flip my lights on. The nav, beacon, strobe. Our parking brake is set. Don't know why we have a runaway elevator trim there.
Caution.
So I'm gonna move that back down. Definitely don't want to take off with 100% or negative 100 elevator trim. But anyway, I've got my mixture all the way in. I'm going to give it just a little bit of throttle. And then go ahead and turn the switch. The switch can be a little finicky sometimes, trying to get it to turn. That's just adjusting the radio brightness. You can also adjust the panel brightness. We'll do that in a few minutes. But you turn the switch over, and the plane will start up. Now, like we were saying earlier, you can start with the plane already running, and it'll save you some time. But if you're wanting to go through the procedures yourself, then it's nice to have the option to do that. Now you can turn off the parking brake there, or you can use the button in the bottom left corner. I'll go ahead and send the throttle all the way forward, and we'll try to take off. And don't judge me for this terrible takeoff. I'm too busy trying to record and talk and everything else, so it's not going to be perfect. But this video is about X-Plane 10 and not my piloting skills, luckily. So as the airspeed climbs, we'll be ready to rotate. Get that elevator trim back down because it's really messing me up. But you can see the panel really come alive when you get some airspeed and start gaining a little altitude. And to the right side of the screen, you can pull out that little arrow, and that's your autopilot. It's a bit crude, but it works. You've got a heading hold and a pitch hold and an altitude hold. Our heading hold is taking us on a turn to the left because you can see in the center of our dashboard there, or instrument panel, the heading bug is turned to the left. But once it centers it up, it'll level out. Let's cycle through a few views here so we can see this plane in flight. You can see the airport behind us, very nicely detailed for a mobile simulator. And if you look closely, you can even see some of the smoke coming off of the back of the plane, or exhaust, I guess. And as you fly away from the airport, you get more generic textures on the ground, but the actual mesh on the terrain looks pretty good. The water textures aren't even bad. The plane is very detailed. See the pilot in there in the cockpit. Just going to pan around and enjoy the view for a minute. You can see that smoke coming off the back of the plane there. That's going to be your exhaust. It gets a bit more dense if you have an engine fire or a fire in the cockpit, of course. I made a mistake earlier when I said that was Seattle. That's actually going to be Oahu, I believe, the city. Because here's our map, and I apparently selected Hawaii, and that's fine. You can see that the map of Hawaii covers all of the islands. As far as I know, I've never been to Hawaii, but the map pulls out from the left side of the screen, that little arrow. And you can see the map. It gives you an idea of the airports in the area and how far you can fly. If you fly off of the map, it tells you you're out of bounds. Kind of hate that, especially since Infinite Flight now lets you fly globally. But there are so many issues with Infinite Flight that I'll have to make a whole separate video on that. It's cool how the sound changes as you open the door, as it would in real life. Now I'm going to get us set up for a landing. See, I've got us on a short final here. And the flight characteristics are really accurate in this plane, or in this simulator, I guess. And we've got another view, an outside view in the top left corner. So another feature I like in X-Plane is that you can do instant replays after you land or after you crash or whatever happens. You can do a replay of the last 60 seconds so you can see an outside view of what you did wrong. In this case, I had a pretty good landing, and then I just applied the brakes. I don't like that you can't do variable braking, so it's all or nothing when you put on that parking brake, and so it kind of skids to a stop. Now I'm going to change up the weather a little bit and show you what it looks like when you're flying in some adverse weather conditions. We're back in the Cessna 172, and it's a bit stormy out today. The wind in this game is incredibly strong, so if you're going to fly a small plane, you have to fly with the lowest wind settings or no wind at all. As you can see, it's blowing the plane around on the runway without even moving. A little bit of lightning in the background as well. We've got the plane started up. I'm going to go ahead and try to do a takeoff roll. Now, I'm not even going to take credit for this terrible takeoff because this is all the wind. And you can see it lags a bit, which I'm also using a screen recording software, but the weather does take a little bit of a toll on your processing power, but it's still perfectly playable, so it's not really an issue to me. If I wasn't recording, it probably wouldn't be an issue at all. You can see the wind blowing the plane around. If you look in the top left, you can see the outside view. It's blowing it around all over the place. And you're barely even able to maintain some control. So that's not really any fun, but it is good practice. If you do it in a larger plane, it's a lot more realistic, I believe. And now I'm going to show you a few of the other views of the scenery at dusk and dawn and nighttime. So this we've got, looks like an early morning flight as the sun's coming up. I'll set my heading and altitude autopilot and just pan around so we can get an idea of what the scenery looks like. You see the runway lights still visible. All of our buildings and hills in the background. We've got our landing lights on the plane. Now we're going to go for a late evening flight. It's a bit darker out. You can see the textures out over the city have the lighted streets and lighted houses. And the airport runway lights are on, as you can see in this view. And now we're going to switch over to the full night mode so you can see what it looks like when you're flying in the dark. There's the runway fully lit up, and you can see the taxiways are lit. You can even see runways in the distance. And flying over land, you'll be able to see there's the lights in the city over the generic textures, the generic ground textures, I guess. That'll give you an idea of what it looks like to fly at night. But for this video, I'm going to stick to daytime flying so you can really see everything we're doing. Now I want to go through and let's practice some failures. So we'll go through the list here and pick out a few things that could fail. It's going to be just about everything. Engine failures, engine fires, the flap actuator system, landing gear system. You can do a fuel leak, but that's a bit frustrating when it happens right off after takeoff. So you can even do landing gear tires. You can have a flat tire, which is fascinating. And I selected left flap remove. I've never actually had one flap fail in the game, but it's always could fail, so I don't really know what the deal is there. Maybe it just hasn't ever failed. And I don't know if left flap and right flap remove will actually make the flap fall off of the plane. Now we're going to be in the Beechcraft Baron. That way we can increase our chances of having an engine failure here. And as you see, we can pan around the cockpit. This is incredibly detailed as well. You can open doors, if I can get it to click. There we go. You can hear the sound change as the door opens. The panels got all the buttons and switches that you could want. And the detail is really nice on this plane as well. You can even open your little window here. Go ahead and go on an outside view and pan around a bit so you can see the outside of this plane. It looks really nice. We even have our landing light right there on the landing gear. You can see as I manipulate the rudder, the landing gear moves as well. Just checking my control surfaces. They're all moving properly. Now we're going to go ahead and start our takeoff roll. Increase the power. And then come off of that parking brake. You can see I still got the parking brake on, so that's why I did a little vibration there. But now we got our parking brake off, and we're going to try to find our way down this runway. This plane takes off pretty quickly. You can really see the exhaust coming off the back of this plane as we fly. Coming up out of the airport now. We got a nice view of the city ahead of us. This is one of my favorite planes to fly in this game. And we currently don't have any issues. You see it yaw to the right? Something happened. So let's dig in and see if we can figure it out. There's a clue. It looks like one of our engines has failed and sent us into this spiral here. So I'm going to go ahead and recover from that first. And this is not by any means an instruction on how to fly the Beechcraft Baron. This is me trying to figure it out based on a few videos that I've watched on YouTube, so don't take this as me trying to tell you how to do this at all. But I'm going to take my prop controls and pull the prop control back on the engine that has failed. That way we don't have the increased drag of the spinning engine. And it's quite a bit harder to control, which it should be. I mean, you have to add a considerable amount of left rudder and or left aileron to keep it flying straight. But with one engine, it still has enough power to get you back to where you need to go without any issue. I'm going to go ahead and drop the landing gear and see if we can get back in the airport. Looking at the outside of our plane, you can see that the right engine is completely stopped. So we're only running on one engine now. And we're flying right over the airport. I didn't have a good way to set up a landing there. So I'm going to go ahead and fly on to the next airport. As you can see here on our gauges, there's something clearly wrong. Our right side engine gauges don't match at all to our left engine gauges. So that's another clue. I've set us up on a short final here to this airport. And yeah, I know it's not a good final, but we're going to try to get in here since we're having an emergency. And I raised our gear and lowered it again, and now we've only got 2 landing gear because apparently our right wheel has failed, or our actuator or something. It's not working either way. So I've pulled my power back, I've got my flaps out, and I'm ready to land, but I'm too high and too fast. Now I'm not going to force this thing down, especially not with it wounded as it is. So I decided to do a go around. I'm going to throttle all the way up and pull those flaps up to try to gain some speed. And then I pull my gear up. But if you take a look at the left engine instruments there, you can see that we're not gaining speed like we should be. So it's apparent to me that there's a failure in the left engine now as well. So I don't really have many options at this point. You see my airspeed's dropping fast. Left engine is essentially dead. And we're coming down pretty fast, so I need to go ahead and drop that gear and see if we can set her down somewhere over this grass. You can see the RPMs, they're the top gauge for the left engine gauge, and the RPMs are dropping. They're way out of the green range at this point. So I dropped my landing gear. I've only got 2 gear. Of course, the right one failed. And then I'll drop a little bit of flaps to see if we can get some control with it flying as slow as it is now. If we can make it just over this water, we may actually make a safe landing. I don't have enough airspeed really to pull this off. But I set it down, and as the wheels catch, the wingtip digs into the dirt and starts to spin us around. And of course, we crashed. Next, we're going to do a little commercial airline flying. I'm going to take you up in the MD-11. This is one that requires an in-app purchase, but they also offer you the ability to fly it as a demo for 24 hours. So, as you can see in the cockpit, we have all these light switches, and there's more switches than I can name in this cockpit. I'll try to pan around in a minute and show you what's going on. There's a lot to look at. But let's go ahead and start gaining some altitude first. So we have a nice takeoff roll. You can see all the gauges work as they do in the other planes. And we have a nice takeoff. I'm going to pull out my autopilot and set my heading and set a pitch for a cruise so we can pan around and look at some things. We'll take a look at the plane in flight. It's a really nice looking model. As we fly over the city, you can see how many buildings they have actually modeled into this. It's kind of impressive. And there's a view of the whole airport as we fly away from it. And you can see the exhaust coming out of the back of the jet engines. And there's our wing view. Now I'm setting us up for a maneuver here. I want to show you another great little feature here in X-Plane 10. So we're going to put this thing in a dive. We'll go straight down and gain as much airspeed as we can, starting out at about 20,000 feet. So we've got a ways to go, but it won't take us long to lose this altitude. Now, there is no aircraft stress causes damage. I haven't found a sim that has that on mobile yet, and I wish it did because it would help to accurately fly without causing damage. But we're going to have a little fun here and see what happens. Check out that wing flex. But if wing flex is your thing, then this is definitely your simulator. It's comical how much these wings flex on the MD-11. But maybe that helps it fly if it flaps its wings. I don't know. Last, I want to show off a little bit of the fighter planes. Now, I'm not really into this, but I know a lot of people are. So I want to demonstrate it a little bit here. This is going to be the F4 Phantom. It's free. It comes with a download, so you don't have to buy it or anything. It's a little bit frustrating to fly, honestly. And I know you're thinking that I'm just a terrible pilot because of all the takeoffs you've just seen that have gone horribly wrong. But it's not me. This thing is hard to fly. The elevator trim is a lot of trouble. But as you see, you've got flares, there's a machine gun, then you've got missiles, and you have bombs. So there's quite a bit of things to do here with this jet. See, I fire off a few missiles there towards the ground, and they'll explode on impact. And you can see them as you fly away. Here's another cool feature. You can actually put your camera on the bombs. Check that out. You can watch as we fall away from the plane, and you can put the camera on the bomb and then drop the bomb, or you can check on your bombs if you're dropping from a really high altitude. It's just kind of cool. And then it goes out to a view showing it blowing up, and it sends you to the next bomb, and you can drop that one and repeat the process. I'll speed it up a bit. And we have another bomb drop. As you can see here, I just tapped it several times to drop multiple bombs, because you can drop several at a time. And we're at a higher altitude now, so if you look up, you can see there's another bomb that dropped, and then you can see the jet way up there as we're falling away from it. You get a nice view of the water textures as we come down here to explode. So that covers the bombs. We also have these Sidewinder missiles. Maybe they're not Sidewinders, I don't know. They're missiles. I'm not a missile expert. But you can put the camera on those and fire them as well. You see, I just sent that missile off. It has this nice smoke trail as it's powered by a rocket, I assume, or whatever powers missiles. But you have this view, and you can watch these missiles fire straight into whatever you aimed them at. Now there is a heads-up display inside the F4 that'll help you with aiming these different weapon systems. I don't know enough about it to give you any type of tutorial on it, but it's there, so just trust me on that. Now you can run out of ammo, obviously. You'll run out of bombs and missiles, and even your cannon fire, or machine gun, whatever you want to call it. You'll run out of ammo there, and you may have seen it earlier, there's flares that you can shoot off to, I guess, to dodge missiles if you're playing combat. And you'll run out of those as well, but you get a lot of them. So here I've fired off all the remaining missiles, and we're just going to ride it on down. See, there's several smoke trails coming behind us. There's a little view of the heads-up display inside the F4. You also have GFX and things like that, but you get a lot of those in many different simulators. So I just wanted to showcase all of the special features in X-Plane that really sets it apart from the other mobile simulators. Thanks for watching, and if you like this, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe.